All right, welcome everybody. We are officially live and started, and thank you all for coming this evening. So we have some folks here. I'm going to, rather than have everybody introduce themselves, I'm going to just kind of group you guys, and then, well, let's go ahead and do it. So Alyssa and Antoinette, you guys are the OTs of the group, the folks that I'd like to get. I think, Antoinette, I think you're an OT, but you're a switch placement kind of person.
I'm actually an engineer by trade.
Oh, really? Okay. So maybe we should. Why don't we start with Alyssa? Why don't I'll unpin myself, and why don't we tell each other who we are and why we joined. So,
My name is Alyssa Warren, and I am an occupational therapist working in school systems and a small private practice in Gainesville, Florida. And I'm here because I do a lot of work with switches, and I'm also here with the side motivation of we might actually be adding switches back into the IntelliKeys. So that was my other rationale.
Excellent. Antoinette?
Hi, I'm Antoinette Verdone. I'm a rehab engineer, mechanical engineering, undergrad, biomed, graduate degree. I've been in the industry for 20 years now, and I work with people I have my own business now, and we kind of do all of the weird stuff. So we work with a lot of people with ALS and very severe physical disabilities. And so we get into switches a lot.
Okay. All right. Brady?
Hi, I'm Brady. I'm traveling around right now, but I spent the past 3 years making things for kids with disabilities, 0 to 5 years old. And now I'm just plugging in wherever I can with the assistive technology field.
And you're currently available as you travel the countries in your Sprinter van with your kids.
Correct. And wife and dog.
And that's where you are right now, in a Sprinter van.
Yes, we're in Carlsbad, New Mexico.
All right. Where's Brady? That's what we're going to play today. All right. Mary Elizabeth?
Hi, I'm Mary Elizabeth. I biomedical engineering, last 3 years, been helping a lot of people locally, people with severe cerebral palsy and ALS, a lot of switches, joysticks, and other sensors, and then also doing some abroad work in Ecuador in helping people in orphanages get low-cost assistive tech.
Sweet.
Okay. Eric? You're muted.
Sorry, I'm working on getting up your questions because I have the app running, so I'm trying to get the Facebook Live just going there. My name's Eric Carson. I work with Bill at ATMakers, and my background is really more project management than anything else.
Gotcha. Lori?
Hi, I'm Lori. I'm Bill's wife.
No.
And a special ed teacher.
And founder of Lesson Picks, and you run a therapy center.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. She's also Bill's wife, which is good. All right. So let me kind of go through what I wanted to accomplish and kind of what drove this. There are some people who aren't here yet. Christine Kremlich, I'm going to make her a panelist as well, but we won't do more introductions. Hi, Christine. Join us whenever you want. One of the drivers for this conversation actually was my trip to Indiana a couple weeks ago. And a lot of you saw the video that I made with Chris Young. He was using a sling ring like this, goes on his finger, something he designed that works for him. And then the next day I went to visit Ella Hunt in Elkhart, which is northern Indiana. And I found myself in the morning doing something that really isn't my job. I was taking my time, looking very carefully at how she moved her fingers, looking very carefully at what her motor function was. And in my head, coming up with ways to get that motor movement, that intent, translated into an electronic signal that we could use. And a couple things came up for me. One was, I do recognize that I'm not trained in that, right? So a lot of the people here are in some way trained in that. What I am trained in is the second half, which is, okay, there's motion, get that into an electronic signal and then use that in a way that is useful. But I didn't actually have, a strong OT, ATP, even speech paths with switch management stuff available. And when I talked to Erica, her mom, who hopefully will join us at some point tonight, there really hadn't been, her PT had done some work with it, but there hadn't been a lot of work done beyond where to put the switches that they had, right? They looked at the microlight switches and the capacitive touch switch. They looked at big switches and little ones. But really, it was all about placement. It was never about something that I think we could get to. And if we took the people who really understand where to look for intent early and late in a degenerative disease, where should you be looking when you're talking about somebody with CP versus SMA versus ALS versus stroke? Somebody who's got all that knowledge kind of paired more commonly with somebody who says, oh, we should use something completely different, an FSR, a linear pot, things that probably the folks on the AT side don't think about as a way to get things, to get that motion translated into intent and therefore into the ability to control a PC, to control a device, to speak, whatever it is that we're trying to accomplish. So I thought I would like to do is to start a conversation that I want to go forward from here, which really comes down to how would we find each other when we need to, right? And then where are the boundaries of what we can do? Hi, Christine. I think I might still have you muted, so you can speak if you'd like. Christine is from PRC. She's a rep and a mom of Kylie, who's awesome, and we've worked with her at length now, I think. So that's what I want to get to. I think what I'd like to do is, if you guys are okay with this, and interrupt me at any point if you're not, I'd like to show you what I saw with Ella and walk you through what I thought, and then use that as a jumping off point to, okay, in the future when you're in that situation, here's where you would go find better expertise. Here's where you went wrong. Here's where you're going right, things like that. And I think it'd be easier to start with a concrete example. Does that work with everybody? Yes? Yep. I see. Yeah, lots of nodding. Excellent. All right. So let me switch cameras for a second. All right. You guys should see a very messy desk, yes? Probably not as messy as expected to, but all right. So when I saw Ella, okay, she has SMA type 1. She is a fairly strong type 1, but has not had Spinraza or any of the other drugs that are coming out now, okay? And so I was watching her move her hand. And yes, you are going to look at my hands up close for a few minutes here. And what she basically could do, it was her other hand, I think. No, it was her right hand. She can lift her finger up and down like this, and she can move her thumb like this, okay? And there's really no left and right, and really there's no force, right? So if there's any resistance, that motion stops. She can activate a microlight switch if it is placed right here. And in fact, I think she actually uses 2 fingers if she can. And so things like this, which we make, the little mounts, are great because they can put that right there, and you can use a camera mount or other things. For example, if her hand is sitting vertically, you can place it like this, right? And that's great. We use the, I believe Erica still uses the splat that we gave them. Let me see. I may be almost out of panelists. Jake McAvoy, I'm making you a panelist. Hi. So those are, that's where I was standing. And I was looking at what we could get with just this and that. And I think there's potentially a switch point, possibly 4 switch points, and possibly a variable input on her hand. And one of the drivers for this really came down to the Xbox control. You guys know we made all the Xbox controls, and I brought her a bunch. I know you can't see me. I'm talking with my hands. Hold on. Working on it. All right. So I brought the steering wheel, and her mom thought it was hysterical. I brought the sling ring thing for the Xbox control, and then I brought a couple others that might work for her. The only one that really did work was I gave her 2 switches, one on each hand. What's that?
Bill.
Hello? Who said boo?
Oh, geez.
All right, I can hear somebody. So, so that drove this conversation, and it really was about what can we do to get input into the XAC, the Xbox Adaptive Controller. But of course, it rapidly went from that to how could we control a switch, how could we control a power chair, and things like that. So let me show you where I ended, and then we can go forward. So what I thought we could do, and it does work, is I went out and I bought a whole bunch of tiny condoms. Okay. And I thought these will work great because we can take something like this, or much better, the cloth ones, it turns out. We can take something like this, and I have ones that would actually fit her index finger, but I'm going to show you on this one. So I thought we could take one of these, slide it onto her finger, and then slide a flex sensor into it. So this is a flex sensor, okay? And so what this does is if I slide it in like this, okay, straight down, and I really should have moved the, hold on, come in this way. I don't know how well, if you guys can't see, speak up and tell me. I can't see my screen right now. All right, so that is actually holding a flex sensor onto my hand. And if I bend my hand, right, it will actually, you can hear it clicking a relay, but what it's actually doing is it's sending me a variable amount of information, a variable value that runs from 0 to 65,000, which is how bent my finger is, okay? I can show you real quickly what that looks like. Maybe. I'm not left-handed, I'm sorry. Yeah. All right, so can you guys see my screen? Somebody say yes?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So on the bottom of the screen, you'll see a graph that's being plotted, right? And so as I bend my finger, you'll see some things change. The first row up here is kind of important. It is the raw value that I'm getting. The green line is the raw value that I'm getting from that sensor, okay? So when I bend it or I flex it, I can make it go up and down, okay? The next set down, the orange value right here, the orange and gray, what that does is it subtracts out a rolling average. So if you watch, if I slowly bend my finger down like that, okay, you'll see that the top one stays down and the middle one resets to 0. And the reason for doing that is we want to do different things with these values, okay? One thing we might want to do is we might want to trigger a switch. And in that case, this middle value here, the orange and gray, is much better. And if we want to get a value like a steering wheel or speed control, the top value where you can hold it low or hold it high is better, okay? Now I can see that this is really slowing down my computer, so I'm going to turn off the plotter for a second and come back to my camera. Whoops. I don't want to share. I want to stop sharing. Stop share. Okay. All right. So this to me is what this thing is hooked into, just so I can show you. I did this today because I wait until the last minute for everything. Okay. So what this thing actually is hooked into is these 2 wires that come out of the sensor are just going into an Adafruit feather. There's actually a little resistor down here that you probably can't see to make this a voltage divider. So it's a really, really simple, stupid circuit. And then on top, just to kind of make the point, I put a relay here. And the reason for the relay is that a lot of times people will be like, well, yeah, you can get the value, but we need to make it a switch. And so that's what the relay does. So if I plug in, so there's a AT switch, AT jack. If I plug this in, I can turn that on and off. Okay. So this is something where I think it's important that, let me unplug that so that stupid dog doesn't go off anymore. What I'd like to get to is to have ATs and OTs, ATPs and OTs, who understand that if we can get any measurable sensation, we can always trigger anything with it, right? We can convert it to Bluetooth. We can convert it to keystrokes on a computer. We can convert it to switch controls, and then help us figure out where should we be looking, and not just on the. So first, where should we be looking on the body, and secondly, where should we be going to find out from people, you know, where we can get help. Okay. So Antoinette, I'm glad you're here. I think I have other things like this to show, but I think it's a good time to kind of flip over to Alyssa and Antoinette and some other folks here, not me, and kind of get some feedback on what can we do better here. So are you want me to call on you, or you want me to go to Alyssa, or what do you want?
What do you want to do?
Let's do Antoinette. Hi.
Well, I mean, hi. So just what you said, I say that every time. We need reliable physical movement that isn't tiring. That's all you need. And then it's finding the switch that will do it. So I think that approach is definitely the right approach. I mean, something I was noticing, and I'm an engineer, so I can say this, is the difference between an engineer who is not experienced with disability, like something I saw you do. I'm not sure if I can replicate, but like when you were showing us how she could move her hand, when you first did it, you did it like this,
right?
And then you actually used the switch, you did this,
right?
So those are two different joints, and that's something that I'm sure you realize what you were doing. But someone who's an engineer, you give them a problem. Oh, let's throw a flex switch on there. Well,
right.
What joint are we using? Can she actually do this? Can she do this? So it's being specific in that way. That's the important part.
Yeah. So you're right. So just to be clear, I was using this short one, which is probably, so you probably can't see it now. The short flex sensor is actually, I have you pinned. Hold on. I don't like this this interface, but it is the only one that publishes to Facebook. So you're right. So I was actually probably measuring this joint right here. And she probably could move this joint right here. So the answer.
But I just bring that up because I've seen other examples where people say, "Oh, I can flex my finger." Well, what exactly does that mean?
So,
because this flexion is very different, even just from an energy output, than the whole hand. I mean, just from the fact of gravity plus getting it back up, plus getting it back down again.
So one of the reasons that I have it set up the way that it is. So I have two. You guys probably can't see this well. So I got two links of the flex sensors, and this one is set up for a very short finger, but the idea is actually to have it on the either taped or held here as well. So the longer one would actually do that. And I tried it with the longer one on me, so I could do that. But you're absolutely, that is exactly the kind of thing that I want to get, right? But not just what are the three things that we're going to do wrong. Which is still helpful. Antoinette, where did you go?
I'm still here.
I don't see your camera. Hold on.
We see her.
Oh, there you are.
I think another thing is the hand is not the only place you can use a switch.
Right. Right. So absolutely. In fact, let me switch back to a second to me. So I did want to actually kind of show a set of these things that I've tested with. This one is probably the most interesting one that I've seen, which I've never seen used in an AT setting. Right. So this is actually what's called an FSR. It's a FSR, force sensitive resistor. And what it does basically is if you press on this thing, however hard you press on it is how high the value will be. But you can press anywhere on the strip. right? And this one is, I don't know, 24 inches long. So you could actually probably put it like on an entire arm of a chair. And if they could hit that anywhere on that arm, that would actually work, right? So one of the things I'd like to do is to make sure that the folks who are doing switch placement aren't looking at just commercial switches, but what else might be able to measure that value, right? And I know you're an
That
engineer.
might be good. That might be good for someone with more gross motion versus fine motor.
Right, exactly, right. And then this one is another FSR, which works the same way. It's just tiny, but it is so sensitive that it's almost capacitive touch, but it actually, you do have to touch it, but the harder you press, you get different values, right? So you literally could say a hard press and a soft press mean different things, right? Because you can measure that. So Antonette, where would I have found, so I was in Chicago. I was in Elkhart, Indiana, which essentially is just outside Chicago. It's not really Indiana. They don't think it's Indiana. If I was in Chicago or if I was in Indiana, how would I find somebody to help a family place switches? It's not your average OT.
I mean, I would look, the first place I always go to is ATPs listings in the area, because I did this when I moved to Austin. I was living in New York City. I moved to Austin. I knew nobody. I literally printed out the ATP list, called every single one. Anyone who would have coffee with me, I talked to them. And they may not have even been someone that I would do work with, but in my experience, ATPs, even if, say, they're a seating technician, that's an ATP, they're very connected in their community. So that's always been my go-to, is look up the ATPs. They do, in the listing, it will say you have, as the ATP, you choose these things. You can say what area you work in. So at least that would give you a clue.
Would you go to ResNA to find them? Where would you?
Yes.
You go to ResNA? So so wonderful, and I don't think any of the parents would know to go to ResNA. I will tell you that I've seen two types of ATPs, right? There's the mobility provider ATP, and there's like all the rest of them. If you find the wrong one, will they just redirect you? Is that kind of the idea here?
Well, that's what I'm saying. In my experience, ATPs, because anyone who chooses AT as a career they're typically people who, and especially who have chosen to get their ATP, they're in it to be in the industry. So they may not work in that area, but they probably know the person who does.
Okay. So, and so ResNA is probably the right, and nationally, is there like a registry of find an ATP near you?
Yep.
That's ResNA.
That's the resna.org site or something like that?
Yeah.
Okay. I hear Alyssa up there as well. Hi.
Yeah.
Is there anything I'm missing that you want to add?
Yeah. Well, I was going to say I'm sitting in that dual role of being an OT and an ATP. So, I mean, I think there are times when I do get kind of cold calls from someone who's looking for something, and, you know, my genre of work is more on the peds end. So if it's somebody that's older, I will connect them to somebody who's working, you know, more experience in that area if I can't help them out. But I think, you know, yeah, you're right. For a parent to just kind of know, oh, well, I go to ResNA. Nobody really knows that ResNA sits behind the accreditation of ATPs. And you're just as likely to kind of find it by chance, which is not necessarily a great thing, you know. But I think, you know, when you first pulled the switch example out, to me, what it looks like is a variable grade ribbon switch.
Yes,
you know?
very, very close to that. Yeah. Except for it's not just a switch, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Yes,
But I think that's the promise of it. Cause I think for the kids that I work with or adults who have CP, they get stuck in that all or none level of hit. And so being able to find something that can take a, on their way up, it's going to activate A, on their way down, or when they're at their fullest activation. Because I do have a ton of kids that may have one really good spot, and sometimes it's their foot, and yet that's the place they have the best control over grading it. If I try to use their hand, it's I can whack things, but I don't have great upper extremity control versus the foot.
Okay. So I did get, so I asked the question about this to my network, and then I got a couple of people come back privately, and I was asking the question, how do you find the right placement? And I got some assessment tools that are used, every move matters or every move counts or something like that, and then another one that came from Julie Marzano. Is there anything are there any groups like that have guidelines that are geared, and rather than saying geared towards engineers, because nothing's going to be geared towards us, but geared towards parents rather than OTs, of what to look for? Or is there anything that's not OT specific that you guys use that might be useful? Because the truth is, we're going to come into contact with folks that say, I just need a better X, or he can move this hand or whatever, and they're going to ask us for help. They're not going to say, please do an assessment. They're going to say he needs help getting this light touch switch positioned, or this is no longer working for him. I'm great with saying you should reach out to Resna and find an ATP. I also wanted to be able to say, in the meantime, I want to have a clue, like a beginner's version of what I need to know about this. Does that make sense to you guys?
There's a guide from UK, and I don't think it's called, but I'm trying to find it in my Google Drive, that I use parts of for assessment and parts of to try to explain to team members who switches are not their area at all about why we're choosing specific methods. And I think maybe parts of that might be helpful to take from and use. So I will find that and get it to you.
Okay. All right. So I haven't asked Christine anything, and you're muted. Are you? Let me unmute Brady. Brady, I muted you for a little bit there. Sorry. Christine, do you have anything on this that you want to add? Yeah, you're still muted. Let me. Right, no, it's okay.
Now?
Yeah, there you go.
Awesome. So I can say this was a struggle for us personally about trying to find people who could help with access and how to access a device and how to access switches. And it's an ongoing issue, even still today. I don't know how parents do find that person. You just stumble upon it and keep asking until you find somebody who can say yes. But, I'm a special ed teacher, and I still struggled with it. So I don't know how your average Joe Schmo parent finds.
You're a PRC rep. I mean, you're pretty well connected, right?
Yeah. Well, I wasn't when she was first doing this, right?
Gotcha.
But I was a special ed teacher. I had connections then too. And even still, it's still an ongoing struggle. I mean, so
I will tell you, and Antoine, I think it's important that you hear this too. I'll unpin you. I wish I didn't have to pin everybody when they talk, but it seems I have to. So I will tell you that I think it's important, for whether we like it or not, and whether the OTs and Resna and ATPs and speech paths like it or not, sometimes the makers are going to be the first people that come in contact with somebody who needs a custom switch or is trying to find a switch placement. And I would love to have said to Erica, oh, your OT asked for a new elbow switch. It wouldn't be elbow for whatever, finger switch for Ella. Let me help you come up with that. But that's not how it happened, right? And so what I'd like to make sure we have is that we have resources for makers that say, and we kind of do this. We kind of do this on the speech side as well, like with lesson picks. Is we have things where people are asking us questions that are about core vocabulary, or they're about things that are that should be answered by a speech path. We've got resources where we send them to the speech path, right? But we also, in this case, might be the shortest path they have to something that works. So we want to make a fine line here that says, here's where you should be asking. Let us help you find somebody. In the meantime, let's try this. Because nothing we're talking about here, and there's a big caveat that says we're not using these switches to drive power chairs at least not in the beginning, okay? We've never driven used our switches to drive a power chair. I have made a box that helps control a power chair, but that's a separate issue. And there's a long story there. But when we're talking about things like using speech, communication devices, or using toys, or controlling the XAC, or controlling an on-screen keyboard, a row column scanning keyboard, it's pretty low risk, right? We might tire the child, but as long as we're not saying, oh, we've solved it, right? I don't think there's a lot of risk in trying the first attempt while pointing them to somebody who can help. Antoinette, do you disagree with that? I know you are one of my touchstones because you usually come back and say, oh, here's a device you can just buy. Not usually. Sometimes you come back and say there's a device you can just buy. And it does bring us back to we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
With that in mind, am I right here? Am I wrong here?
I mean, I think it could be a very simple one-sheeter. Now, something I will say, how much time did we spend picking the communication device? We should spend just as much time on how we're going to access it.
Yeah.
So that's going to be my little soapbox I'm going to put to the side. But all that said, I think a one-sheeter could easily be made. Like I said, and some of this, I mean, parents know their kids. They know what they can do. So if you had or anybody knows what they're physically able. So what can you reliably physically do that doesn't tire you out? It could be a very simple sheet that just had some guidelines. And if I'm the person with the disability, if I've never even thought of this concept of switch control, just having those guidelines to go by would be enough. I might not know what the switch is, but at least I could say, I can move my finger, I can bring my legs together really easily. I had a client once in a nursing home. This is back in the day, she was using Easy Keys, if anyone remembers that. I show up, she had ALS, and she's using the thing like a champ. I couldn't figure out how she was physically accessing it. I had to ask the nurse, and she was bringing her thighs together. But it was such a slight movement, I couldn't even see it happening. I wouldn't have even thought to use that motion, but somehow someone figured that out.
So we don't want to know how they figured that out. But it is something where I think if we have any input into what's on that sheet, it specifically shouldn't say, here are the 6 switches that you should consider. Because I think honestly, a lot of people look in their AT closet and think, which of these is going to work for this kid? None of them. Or this one's going to do the best of the 6 that I have, right? And even if you look at the market, even if you look at ASL's catalog, right, which probably has as many options as any, ASL and AbleNet together should probably cover most of what you're going to find in a closet, in an AT closet. I think that also does the wrong thing, right? It gets them looking at choosing.
Well, you're starting with the solution instead of figuring out what the problem is.
Right. And I think there's some value here. And I think, unfortunately, it's something that I don't think anybody on our side, and I don't want to call it our side, on the makers here, right, aren't like Brady and I aren't going to come up with this sheet, right? It might already exist. Resna might have it, but I've never seen anything like it. Have you guys ever seen anything like it? Are both of you ATPs? Alyssa, are you an ATP?
I am, yeah.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Okay. And then Mary Elizabeth, you're not, but you could be, right? In your future, you never know. You got the biomedical engineering degree. You just need some hours. I bet you've got them. Take a couple classes. You can be an ATP. You're muted, but it's fun to watch you talk.
I definitely already have them. One thing I did want to say is the power of video. We've, as a team, we've even uploaded little snippets of, a 16-year-old using a joystick and like how he moves. And I know that the idea of a sheet is great, but a lot of parents right away will just see that and say, oh, my son could do that, or my aunt, she has movement like that. And then that's a good starting point to say, hey, well, we tried these things with Aaron, maybe that would work for you.
Yeah, or even doing something like this, right? So doing a live beam in with Zoom or GoToWebinar or Google Hangouts or Skype or whatever, right? I mean, let me ask the you three, and Alyssa and Antoinette, mainly you two. Can you do like an initial answer some questions remotely, or do you really need to be touching and feeling and playing with the kiddo?
Yeah, so I'm doing some teletherapy evals, and mostly troubleshooting. It depends on whether you're troubleshooting as a you, Bill, or me, what platform I would use. We'd have to use paid Zoom with a BAA for it to be HIPAA compliant and all that other stuff. But for troubleshooting, absolutely. I think there are some things we can definitely do troubleshooting wise, especially if you've got a really great, knowledgeable caregiver or somebody with that other person that can help kind of be your hands and feet.
Is that something, so Eric is here. Eric, you might be handy. So Eric has put a lot of BAAs in place with, so BAA is an agreement with a third party that they take the responsibility for managing the HIPAA of your data. Because somebody watching this isn't going to know what we're talking about. Is that something where, as a nonprofit who's helping with this, would it help if that existed? That we had that kind of like maybe having one of those would make it easier for you if you knew that you were on the ATMakers Zoom, which had a BAA in place, or would you have to have a BAA with your organization?
It kind of depends on what you're doing it with and for. So the paid version of Zoom will allow you to sign a BAA with Zoom. So
Right.
They have their own internal Zoom BAA. So the other place that might be already doing it, I'm blanking on it, but there's another organization that's kind of setting up some telehealth stuff for AAT and AAC users, and they may already have it. But yeah, I mean, I think it would help providers who aren't already using it to know they could kind of loop through you guys to utilize the platform that would ensure the HIPAA compliance.
Okay. Antoinette, do you think that that an initial assessment, or at least the ballpark, would be useful remote?
I mean, especially if you're working with total novices that don't even know what's out there. Again, so seeing the motion,
right,
at least point us in the right direction. Then it's like, okay, let's try these 3 options. Then we'll send them to you, and then watching them operate it, then it could. Because I mean, it's the motion. It's also positioning and mounting is the other piece that we could send the switches, but trying to describe mounting in words without video is practically impossible.
Right. Yeah. When I show people the splat, have you seen the splat mount?
You're like,
I don't have one. It's the greatest thing ever. Alyssa, do you agree with that?
Yes, I was gonna say I've got one sitting right here.
Ah, look at that. Okay.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. Okay.
Yeah. So if you take one of those and then you add one of these, let me put myself on here for a second. So take one of those and you mount one of these on it. You can basically put a microlight anywhere, and it is like the greatest combination ever. And of course, it's a total of $20, $18 or something ridiculously stupid, and it happened absolutely by mistake, right? I was sitting there playing with that splat one day because I was just literally just playing with it, and I'm like, I wrapped it around my hand, and I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever, right? You wrap it around somebody's hand and you can put it right on their finger, and then no matter where they move their hand, it's still in place.
Or like, having like some modular hose options, even just for prototyping, just to see where the switch needs to be.
Yeah, an Instamorph, right? I mean, we can take one of these FSRs and place it with Instamorph literally anywhere, right? And let me show you something. You guys okay if I cut back to me showing something overhead for a second? So I don't know if you guys can see me or not. I think so. All right. So so this is the next thing that I will try with Ella as well, is that on the thumb, I've thought about putting this into an Instamorph that I could literally put right here, right? And it's not capacitive touch. It could be, but capacitive touch adds some extra complexity and timing, and sweat changes it, and all kinds of things throw off. And relays like this go crazy around capacitive touch. They don't get along well. But this FSR is actually, and it's cheap. I think it's $7 for the FSR, which I guess isn't dirt cheap, but it's cheap compared to 90% of the stuff the alternatives we're talking about, right? But I think we can.
What's triggering it? Is it force?
Yeah. So that's what I was going to show you. So this is set up here. Let me go back to the shared screen for a second, and I'll show you what it does. So, all right. So this has got the same code showing the same chart. And when I press, right, my finger's still sitting on it. Ignore the relay for a second. The harder I press, here, let me turn off some of these. I knew this was going to be an issue. Too many lines, so I was ready. Let's see, save. Okay, so now we should just have the two. There you go. So now if I take this and I just touch it, right, you'll see it's got like a low value there. So the higher I press, all I'm doing is pressing harder, right? So if I barely press it, it's almost zero. The green line is what you should be watching. I can hold it up. I can go higher. I can go all the way down to zero. I can actually use this as a potentiometer, as a volume control, a knob, right? Just by how hard I'm pressing. I'm never lifting my finger. I'm just pressing lighter and harder. And of course, if you let go, it goes all the way down to zero. So very light touch will trigger something. So here, we'll let this, when it gets to the edge of the screen here, it'll reset. I'll show you. Let this thing go off. Come on. All right. So now if I just barely touch this, right, like right there, that's barely touching it. If I press hard, right, now it's way up there. So probably about the same resistance as, like, the triggering point on this is lighter than a microlight, heavier than a cap touch, like a candy corn. But what's neat is I can do like a 1/3 press, a 1/2 press, and a full press. And those are different things, right? And it's just software at this point, right? Those can literally be different letters that get sent to your iPhone. So they can be different switches in iOS switch control. A light press and a hard press can be two different things. So it's one of those, this is one of the things that I wanted to show. Another one that I don't have out, but I can dig it out if you need me to, is a slightly, here it is. It's, let me go back to my screen, my camera. Is this one. So this looks the same, but it's not. This one looks like an FSR. I know I'm out of focus, sorry. There you go. It looks like an FSR, but it's not. It's actually what's called a linear pot. And basically, if you touch it here, it's low. And if you touch it here, it's high, right? And so basically, this is if you touch it here, it's a 1. And if it's there, it's an 8, right? And you can have as many variations as you want in here. The total pressure to touch it is very light. It's probably about the same as a microlight. But if you can do this, you can get 2 different points, right? If you can do this, you can actually have a variable input that's speed control, that's whatever it is you need on this. And of course, the code's identical. As soon as we have it into one of these, right, we can do whatever we want with it. And we've got these that do Bluetooth. We got these that do Wi-Fi. We got these that have relays and control switches. We've got, things that these mount onto that give you 5 different relays. You can control 5 switches. We've got a million different things here that we can put together But I think a lot of these things aren't available, not just commercially. They're not in AT. They just don't exist in AT. And it's wrong, but it is what it is, right?
Well, I mean, think about the market for these very specialized switches. It's really small.
Correct. Right. So, but the interesting thing is, it's very small. And that's why if you're going to make one, you're never going to sell it as an assembled part, right? But let me turn around a different question for you. And I think this is for Antoinette and Alyssa specifically, and Christine. If you were in an assessment and you didn't see an AT solution in the catalog that would capture that motion, right? Whatever that motion was, a flexing of a toe, right? Or a foot, or whatever it is. Alyssa, I'm pretty sure you would pick up the phone and call me, because you're close enough that I think you would probably call me. But where would an ATP go to get something custom made?
I mean, this is the issue. You have makers that know how to make things, and you have AT people that are running into the people. And right now there is no bridge between those two. And I mean, it's frustrating, but I understand why it happens. And AT is such a heterogeneous group that's difficulty, and the makers are heterogeneous. You're dealing with 15-year-olds in a robotics class, and then like a retired NASA engineer who's doing stuff in his backyard. Like, how do you bring those people together? I don't know the answer to that.
Right.
All I know is the main thing that frustrates me is when I see makers make things that are already made or are like way over engineered for what they need to do. And they've spent, a whole semester making something that they didn't need to do that.
So yeah, so that is, I have a more frustrating thing. It's when they make something, turn it in for their project, lead the way project, get an A, and never give it to the person they made it for.
Mm.
That is probably off the charts for me. I understand your point about making something that already exists. I think availability is an interesting thing. I think there's levels of it, right? I mean, you could say EMG switches exist, but they're $13,000, right? Making one makes sense because you can make it for $75. Christine's got a door opener probably within eyeshot of where she is right now, because it's expensive and it shouldn't be as expensive as it is. We're not going to solve all of that. So to me, some of the things that we make do exist, but making them makes a point. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with making points. I'm going to make a big point with something that looks like this in a few weeks, probably 2 weeks. And it's just to make a point. It exists, but I'm going to make it for $80 and I'm going to piss off a lot of people. And I'm never going to sell it. It's just to make a point. That's a different.
I think this may be the crux of the break in the bridge is liability. Like, right. As a business owner, I cannot sell or even provide or maybe even talk to someone about something that is made by a maker. Because if it breaks, now I could say I've made things, but I'm typically like I'm using RAM mounts and readapt and kind of putting things together. I don't know if you call that maker or not. Those are all commercially available things. But I think that's probably the break in the bridge is liability.
So I think that's the fear, and I think it's real. Okay, I think that it's absolutely true. I think it's interesting that you hear that. There are some limits, right, of things that we will do. We'll adapt just about any toy. Is there a risk? Yeah, there's a small risk that there can be a short and there can be a fire. It's a really small risk when you're at 3 volts and, this isn't going to this is not going to be the challenge, right? The stuffed animal is not going to be the issue. Again, power chairs are a separate issue. Speech devices, the risk would be frying a device.
Mm-hmm.
Realistically, if a switch can fry a device, there's some liability on both sides there, right? There's some culpability on both sides there.
Well, maybe liability is a part of it, but it's also reliability.
Yeah.
Because the funders are typically one and done. So you get a device, if it only works for 6 months and you can't get I can't come back for another 5 years.
Correct.
What does that do?
But with your makers, that's not the case, right? So Christine got a door opener. It worked until her neighbor screwed her with making her change her password, and we didn't think through how easy it would be to change the Wi-Fi password, and it failed. And it was frustrating for her, and it took time for me to get back up there and fix it for her. But we did, right? And I think I hear an argument a lot about we cover insurance, it costs us a lot of money for our insurance. I would like to actually ask companies for their deck pages when they say that, right? And how often have you actually paid out on that insurance, right? Because I think a lot of times the insurance
not
actually
very litigious. So that's,
I think in some cases the insurance may just be a bankruptcy declaration, which doesn't really help you, right?
But if the parents are driving it, then that's a different thing.
So you're both, right? So Christine, you're both. You are both a parent,
Yeah.
and you are a rep for PRC,
right?
So you have kind of an interesting perspective. Where are you on that? How do you treat us? How do you treat maker-made stuff differently?
I do see it more as a parent-driven kind of a thing. That this is something that comes from a parent out of truly desperation. I can't find this solution anywhere else. I've looked, I've tried, I've asked people, nobody seems to have an answer. And a parent is driving this conversation and trying to find a solution. To me, as a parent, I can tell another parent, hey, I think this is something that you might try. As a PRC consultant, I probably would have a little more reluctance to do that. But as a mom, this has made solutions for my kid that I couldn't find anywhere else.
Well,
So,
I think it's all about expectations too.
Yeah.
What are your expectations? As long as they're realistic, and I think that's again, a maker can make a thing, but if it's got exposed wires, things like that they may not think about. Okay, is the person gonna drool on it? It
Right.
needs to be protected. That kind of stuff. There's just that. It's not that much, but it's that there's this half a step that a run-of-the-mill maker just isn't going to put in design, where if they had that extra step, then it would be a more usable solution.
So,
but if they were working with the family, right, and the family says, that's not going to work because of X, Y, and Z, and then, okay, you're going to have to redesign because that doesn't work for my kid because they drool. Those kinds of things, I think, help them learn and do better the next time too. So, I would hope that if there were that dialogue, the problem where I am is that I don't even have a group to dialogue with. So, and
Yeah.
everywhere I go, I'm asking them who their robotics club is. Everywhere I go. Every school, everywhere I am. Who's your person? Maybe you should try to connect with them. And it hasn't happened yet, and not for lack of trying. I mean,
right. Atlanta's a problem. I do have some hope for you there. We can chat about it afterwards. But Ben Satterfield actually put me in touch with a good group up there. It's not a robotics team, but it may be a team that I'm going to try and get them to get together with Danny.
Oh, good.
See if we can solve Danny. And then if we solve Danny's the one where the project leads the way. That's that.
Yeah.
So poor Danny. Danny's been waiting for a door opener for 2 years.
Danny has.
And he's seen Kylie's work, and that's just wrong.
It just makes him mad.
Yeah, it does. So, and I think that's another big challenge for us as makers is, especially when you're dealing with teens. I'll fly to Seattle when I've failed Jim Lubin 4 times and go out and do the 5th, one in person. When you're dealing with teens, they can drop the ball, right? And I get it. I totally get it. And the flip side is it is so good for those kids
Yeah.
to come in contact with Kylie or Ella,
It-
and to make, whether it's toys or switches or mounts or a sock, put a
Yeah.
device to put on socks, right? That's what the kids up in Indiana just did. It's so good for them as individuals, as people.
If you build that relationship though, and I think it is about building a relationship, then I think some of that can go away. I mean, I really do think you have to build a relationship with these people, and so that there can be that open dialogue, and so that you can have those discussions, and so that there is more buy-in, that it's not just, okay, well, we've been assigned this thing and this is what we're doing. But I mean, no, I know this kid and I'm invested in this because Kylie's my friend, or because whoever's my friend, right? I want
we have
better.
we have an issue with that down here, even on our best teams, right? Even on our best FRC teams that do the most work, and they're the best. Okay, they have a tendency to, and we're fixing this year. They'll send a group of kids to the Adaptathon, and then they'll send a different group of kids to deliver the toys to the kiddos. No, the kids who adapted the toys need to meet the kids who are getting it, right? And I think we are learning a lot of these lessons year after year, right? So as we've done this longer than a few months, I think we are doing that. We need to document them. We need to share them so that people don't have to learn them again. But I think you're right. I think that where we have a good working relationship, where we have success, you get tolerance and patience and understanding. And Ella and Max are driving their chairs because of something that ATMakers made for them, and their power chair companies were wrong to say it didn't exist, but it is what they said for a year and a half. Okay, we made one. It made them all angry. Now those two families, they will be as patient with me as I need, and I have great faith that we are working as partners here, not as customer and provider. But it is important, I think, that we remember where the lines are, right? And this is why, Antoinette, I'm glad you're here, because you are one of the people who regularly points out to somebody here, right? That exists, right? And fairly often the answer is, well, not quite. We could do it better. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means that we could do it better.
Good.
Go ahead, Brady.
Well, so, with my experience working with a team, an OT, a PT, and a speech, and then me being the maker in the organization, a lot of times what we were doing was we were filling that gap until the solution that is commercially available could be acquired. So we all know that, various forms of acquisition, sometimes they're fast, usually they're not fast enough. So if we can generate that, fill that gap until maybe the more reliable, that's one of the things with switches, it's reliability. So there's no doubt that commercially available switches, they have a standard that they have to meet. And the maker switches are just not always going to live up to that standard. So do we fill that gap? I think that's a great solution. I think, do we fill those niche ones that don't have the marketability? They're not going to have enough user base to warrant a company actually doing the research and developing the product. I think that's another great direction. And then, kind of what I'm seeing or hearing when you guys are talking about this is, do we need to generate this guide that says, look, here's the whole maker AT. Here's the chapter on switches and what we've developed, and essentially just case studies for, Ella, this worked for Ella, and Ella could move, this, and Jack had, he could wiggle his toes. I've sat in appointments where parents, they never thought that their kids, being able to control their feet was a switch site, and so whether it's for other therapists or whether it's for parents, just opening up that information, I think, is very important. And just how we present that. And then the last bit on that is, if we develop this guide, or if we develop this list of case studies for different solutions, like, are therapists going to be willing to access that and actually make a recommendation based on the information we provide? And I don't remember who presented the question before about whether or not like they would actually recommend the Makers product.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding, and the therapists that we worked with, it was under their license. So, they were making the call that this design was a proper solution and that they were willing to vouch for it in that circumstance. So that's case by case for the therapist, I assume, plus, the relationship with the maker, of course.
And you were in Southwest, what's the name of that?
Southwest Human Development's Adapt Shop.
Gotcha. Which still exists without you?
Yes, it does.
Good.
Correct. Yes.
Good. So you're missing it yet?
Every now and then.
All right. By the way, I think it's probably worth you guys knowing what Brady's job was, right? So Brady was in a job that I think most of the makers here would love, and he can tell you a long time over a beer why he's leaving. But he was literally hired as the maker for an OT PT speech group, right?
Yep. Correct.
And you basically put together a makerspace with a CNC router, and you made lots of wooden custom chairs and placements, and you made a ton of stuff, right?
Absolutely.
And that was done under that company's umbrella, and with their blessing to make
correct. I mean, they of course had the kind of overarching say on things, but it was very clear in that team that liability went through the therapist on whether or not that was a proper solution for that child.
Yeah. So when I went there, it was a very interesting. I haven't seen it anywhere else, right? Where an OT shop, and it's not just a shop. So what is that organization? How many people does it serve and stuff?
Well, I think I don't know the numbers. I'm not the development team, but it's a very big organization and they serve a lot of people in a lot of different ways. This was just one little program. They have over 40 programs. But yeah, it's very unique in the fact that you have a paid fabricator, which was my job, sitting in an appointment with a paid therapist that just kind of comes alongside an ongoing therapy team to address the developmental disability of that child. So whatever that goal is.
That yours, Brady?
Yeah. So, playing in the desert. Yeah.
That's awesome.
But coming alongside that team and really addressing whatever it is, like, look, we want Joe to be able to sit up. A lot of it was posture, positioning. If it was tummy time, we'd accommodate things like PICC lines and G-tubes, and it was a custom design that would actually get delivered. And I don't know of that. There's a few other places where you can go to a maker group and put in your request and they might deliver it. But I haven't seen where it's actually like the fabricator, the therapist, and like the parent and the family might be sitting in the same room.
I mean, that's what rehab engineers did 20 years ago when
Right.
they were housed inside of rehab hospitals and their budgets could absorb their salaries. So
Yes.
kind of making a full circle.
Yeah.
So,
And that's, yeah. We can talk about that.
Antoinette, what happened?
Funding.
Money.
Yeah, but
No, seriously, therapy cap. I mean, it just buckled their, like, a normal rehab hospital has no margin whatsoever. Back in the day, they had plenty.
Even as much as
machine shop. I mean, like, NYU still has a machine shop. I don't know if the guy's still there, but a lot of these old hospitals have machine shops buried inside of them.
So it's
and in
interesting.
Arizona specifically, there's also this big issue where you can't recoup if you have two PTs sitting in the same appointment. So if their team, a weird thing that we kind of worked into the system eventually was if their ongoing lead was a PT and they wanted to come see our PT, they would actually have to bump their PT off the list and bring ours on for the appointment if that was the case. But usually we could only bill for one one PT for that appointment.
So Antoinette, here's why I asked what happened. And money, I understand the answer is money, and it generally is. But Brady, while I have you here,
Yeah.
you take your salary and you take what it cost you to make those solutions over the course of a year. Was it less than buying them?
Well, it really depends. It depends on how you look at it, because the things we were making were very low cost. They were, bang for the buck. You couldn't compare it to commercial equipment, because you couldn't get that custom, you couldn't get it that quick, and you most likely wouldn't get funded, within a timely manner to where if it was a very specific need that we're addressing, it would accommodate or, be the solution for that problem. I don't know that I can give you a yes or no on that.
But it's different buckets of money. You're talking about therapy versus equipment.
That I believe. It's not, so that I completely believe. I'm not going to argue that at all, but I think that is a bigger, it's not the total amount of money that's available is less. It's just that we are structured wrong and broken. Mm-hmm. And that's true with most of AT. It's also why, no offense, Christine, speech devices are insane, right? Because they're funding the speech paths with the cost of the device, which is just stupid. But
they also haven't changed the reimbursement since they put the code in over 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
But you don't want to necessarily complain about that. Let's not have them look at the numbers too closely, because then it might go by.
Then you can't pay for the speech paths anymore.
Right.
That's right. No, I got it. I understand the argument. I disagree with it, but I understand it. But I think
it's some comments coming in on Facebook, by the way.
Oh.
Do you want to read them?
All right. So, Eric, that's your job. You want to share that with us?
Sure. There are a few different things that came up. One, Jake replied a little while ago when you were talking about the pressure strip, the FSRs, just that he has done that in the past with some force level FSRs. He said it's possible, but not trivial. So if you want to check with him later on what he learned from that exercise, it'll probably help. There were a couple other things. There was a book, there was an earlier comment here, and I'm not sure I can see all the comments. It kind of, if I can find them all.
Elizabeth, can you see them? Mary Elizabeth?
Yeah. Shannon says, I agree, but if the makers are making it for under $100, families may be able to get another one if it isn't a huge burden. And if makers can troubleshoot problems, that may be helpful. So maybe there should be a group of makers, AT/therapists, present a problem and troubleshoot. Then amazing products could be specifically made for those who need it. And then she said, Medicaid funding is always tight. So I think that might have been recently.
In response to the rest of this, right? Okay. Yeah. All right. So,
and then just because as far as network goes, obviously there's ATMakers. So I don't know if we're ever going to bring. I feel like right now it's makers, it's first teams, and then you're bringing in kind of the medical side of it. Families is this going to be opened up to families eventually, or do you see yourself kind of pushing that way too, Bill? Or should we push towards an established thing like Makers Making Change and point out that network?
So I'm sorry. So is the question, who are we going to direct towards? Who are we going to try and support? Or
yeah, because we've talked about how do you know about these different switch applications? Right. We can develop them, and if they're hosted on ATMakers Facebook group or even a post on the blog, that's great. But how do where's the marketing of that to the end users?
So I think there are a number of groups that kind of do similar stuff. Makers Making Change is Chad Lehman and you and Harry out of Canada, Vancouver. Basically, but they are doing a very similar thing to what we're doing. We do a lot of things together with them. There's a lot of people right now in gaming and another group in prosthetics as well. So there's Grip and there's Warfighter Enabled and a bunch of others. In fact, you'll be with us at AOTA. Don't call it AOTA. I heard Antoinette or AOTA. It's not AOTA. Whatever. I don't care an iota. Sorry. So Alyssa, I don't know. Are you going to AOTA?
Unfortunately not. I only get to pick between ATIA and AOTA.
All right. So there will be quite the gathering of these groups in New Orleans in a few weeks. I think there will probably be some interesting time at a bar working some of this stuff out, Brady. I think the question about the parents is a little bit different. How do we market or get ourselves seen by parents? And I think what I'm seeing is I get lots of parents who find us, and they find us through the CP support group and the SMA support group and the stroke survivor support group on Facebook, and things that we post get shared there, and then all of a sudden they're joining. Right. So we've got, I would say, of the people in the Facebook group, a third of them are professionals, a third of them are AT professionals, a third of them are makers, and a third of them are users or parents or family members. I think, I don't know that number for sure, but that's how it feels to me. Should we be marketing to those folks?
Hello.
Yes. Hi.
Oh, we're all on except Bill.
Yeah, I think. Oh,
What?
He's
Oh,
back.
Bill, you
He's
cut out
totally
for a second.
Cut out.
How long was I gone?
Just about 5-10 seconds.
All right. So I lost Brady. Maybe he was the problem. Is he gone now?
No, I'm moving, so I turned my camera off.
All right. Okay. Okay. So to answer your question, I think we're about a third. Is this where I was? About a third each. AT professionals, makers, and end users or family members who are supporting them. I think that mix has been fairly consistent. Do we need to market to them? Maybe. I'm not entirely sure. I think they are. If the AT professionals know about us, the families will hear about us quickly. That seems to be what I'm finding, right? So when I get a success story in a location, it doesn't take long to find a bunch more people from that location who are asking for help.
Sure.
So if you're talking about getting them more involved as makers, I am hesitant to start making more makers, right? So that's a job for other people, I think. It's not that I'm against it. It's not that it's just that there's only so many things we can try to help with here. So I don't know the answer to your question.
I think it's more connecting the AT people to quality makers.
Yeah. And changing a mindset is, I think, a big thing here that says, and Antoinette, you're not one of them. There are AT people who simply look at what's available on their shelves because it's what they've done since they started their career. They weren't around 30 years ago when people were making solutions. They've been buying them since they started. And I think changing a mindset that says you need to get to a solution. If you can buy it, buy it. If you can't buy it, there are other options, right?
Well, I can just say, the last two Resnas had a chunk of content on 3D printers and, those kind of solutions. So, I mean, it's definitely bubbling up in AT.
Good. So I haven't been to a Resna conference. I probably have the hours to do an ATP too, actually, with a therapy center. Maybe Mary Elizabeth and I should sign up and get ATPs. But I haven't been to a Resna conference yet. In fact, AOTA is the first non-AT or speech path conference I've been to. So we will see how it goes. Is there a good contact at Resna that, Bill Janes is a Resna fellow or something, isn't he?
I don't know who that is.
No. Brady, you know Bill, don't you?
Nope.
You don't know Bill Janes?
From where?
I don't know. He was at ATIA last year, and
I wasn't there.
All right. So,
I was at Resna 2 years ago, though, and I will say I had a conversation with somebody. somebody up on their board or whatnot, and we were talking about 3D printing, and his, quote unquote to me was, yeah, 3D printing will never make proper solutions in assistive technology.
That would be incorrect.
Right.
That would not. I think that has been proven incorrect at this point. It's not the solution, but man, it's a tool, right? All right, so we're pretty far off topic of switches and motor planning.
And over 10.
Let's try and circle back and get like some to-dos here. Eric always is only happy if there's action items in every meeting he has. So it sounds like there is agreement that it would be good to have maybe 2 pieces of collateral here, right? One for each side, right? One being when you're asked to do a switch placement or a switch solution or something like that, here's how to go about finding an expert from RESNA, right? An ATP in the area. And then here are the things to be careful about or to be aware of. And I think that from an OT side, it sounded like, Antoinette, both you and Alyssa, or both of you, kind of might have enough input to give a first pass at that kind of thing. And maybe another one that says, when you're an OT or an ATP and you're doing, and let's just specifically say ATP, here's a list of things to think about beyond the commercial switches. If you can see this type of motion, here are the types of things that might work. And again, here are places you can go to find a Brady, right? Or somebody like me or Bill James or Chad Lehman who can help you find somebody to make that device for you if you're not finding it in the market. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. I just wanted to kind of bring up one thing, because you were talking about, flex sensors, and I think that this is what will come out of the community is, we've made these for a while now, right?
Yeah.
And there's a flex sensor in here, and we use it, it's a glove that can, be deconstructed. There's that same flex sensor that you had. We've learned to put just a thick duct tape over it, and then also we just put in, we printed out these little circuit boards that the flex sensor would go right into, that we realized really helped with fatigue. Because we've done so much stuff with flex sensors and pressure sensors, and those 2 wires you solder on there break apart easily. Right. This is a commonly available part. And then we have just a Bluetooth, little microboard in there that you could use a feather or whatever, but we laid out our own because we're crazy. And that just plugs right in there. And we've had, parents say how awesome this is because they can just take off this glove and, machine wash it and put it back together. And something like that, especially with it being up, that, sometimes makers will have wires coming everywhere and they're not, so pretty. After a couple times, we came up with this, easy glove idea.
Right.
And that also holds the sensor in the right position. And just like you said, it could be long for a certain type of movement. But I think that's what's so important about videos, and then also showing what other solutions are out there, and how to make them. So just kind of want to bring that up.
So Mary Elizabeth, tell me about what your brother's doing.
So yeah, Joey, he's making adapted toys, really low cost. So he's in the basement, just coming up with different toys that he can adapt at like half to a quarter of the price, and really filling that gap where sometimes there might not be a maker that can put it together for you, and if you want it next week, he's kind of the maker that'll do it for $10 and then ship it to you. So that's kind of what he's been doing, and then also Power Wheels cars as well, adapting them. So parents can actually, for the same price of what the parts would be and putting together, a group to do it, it's just more of access. But then, yeah.
The reason that I bring it up is that we get that question a lot, right? So we get a lot of people who say, I just want to buy it. Can't you just can you just sell it to me? Right? I just want that. And the answer I've said fairly consistently is, let me introduce you to your STEM club. Because that's an agenda of mine. I want the STEM clubs involved with AT, right? And it is a great solution. And the robotics teams do wonderful things with them. But all of our solutions are, all of my solutions, all of ATMakers branded solutions are licensed in a way that can be sold, right? So it's Creative Commons, share alike, commercial, not non-commercial. So Creative Commons, share alike license with attribution. It means that if there's a company that wants to make 3D printed switches, that wants to make, I don't know, these relay boards and sell them, wants to take this and drop it in a box and make a very, make a switch interface based on this design, they can do it, right? We're an open source company as a nonprofit, so you can absolutely make all this stuff and sell it. Should we be actively looking for partners to do that? Antoinette, what do you think?
I mean, I say yes. I mean, I wonder what the market even for that would be. I mean, I'm just curious. I mean, I can think of, there's a product I'm thinking of that the guy sells it as a maker kit, but then you can buy it as a put together thing.
Right.
So I think that there probably is a market out there for that. If it's really like a plug together type solution, there's probably that would probably open up the maker concept to AT faster. Because for me myself, yes, I mean, I do some very basic just switch adapting stuff, but if I could buy the pieces and parts, like, okay, here's the force sensor, here's the interface, here's that, I could plug them together, that I could get into. Maybe, when I retire 20 years from now, I'll have the time to, get into actually doing real maker stuff. I just don't have the time to do that now. But that could be a gateway to getting AT more into maker.
Well,
because I know for me, I mean, because I'm the crazy one who unscrews the screws and opens the box, I could open the box and at least understand what's going in there enough to say, these are components that could be bought, and it's not something super expensive. So that could be a way to kind of be a stepping stone.
Yeah, and Bill, I was thinking, I'm still here. I just had to do some doggy care from her little surgery today. So I was thinking earlier when you asked the question about telehealth and would that be a good thing, to me, what would be ideal would be if I'm on one side of the camera, not where the student or the adult is, but the person that's working with them, whether that's another OT or PT or speech or parent, had a kind of like toolbox of things that they could try that were maker things. I think it would decrease the scary factor, because it's like it's in their hands, they're kind of playing around with it, and B, it's kind of like ready to make and help us figure out what might work, whether we're in person or telehealth. If I'm a newbie OT or PT or speech who don't have a whole lot of experience, but I'm pretty technologically savvy, but somebody sent me, here's a box of things I could rent, I could check out, I could borrow, that that I think would help advance, if a robotics club isn't readily available, the accessibility of it to try and work with in a home setting or with a kid in a school.
Okay. All right. So before we need to wrap soon, right? So we're half an hour over where I wanted to go.
Hey, Bill, really quick before we can run request that came in before we lose Mary Elizabeth. That it was, can you share the Facebook page of your brother? I have many families that would love to buy gifts for birthdays. Yeah,
you can add it to the link. You can add it to the comments after, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and it doesn't have to be Mary Elizabeth's brother. It just was more. That was. I knew
Right.
it was happening. That she was doing it, and she was here, right? So I don't. That's not an endorsement yet. That's just that I wanted to bring it up because I knew it was an option, and I think it is something where we need to be considering it, and maybe look at stuff like what's his name, Jonathan. They'll just switch company. What's his name? Jonathan Eckrick. Adaptivations, right? So Adaptivation makes kind of small volume, small quantity switches and things like that. We might, or Glenn Sills, or somebody who is in the space but would be willing or able to take the solutions we make and commercialize them on small batches, still custom, but it's a thought. I'm not sure where it goes yet. I do know it is frustrating for me to hear somebody like Ella at age 7 still doesn't have consistent eye gaze or switch access for her speech device. She's on her third speech device or second speech. She's about to get her third speech device, I think.
Well, and, I mean, not to open up another can of worms, but we're assuming everyone understands what switch access means.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and the truth is, I'm not sure that I agree with what a lot of people think it means. Right? A lot of people think it means being able to access the switches that go into their speech device. That's. So did you see the video I made with Chris Young in his house?
Mm-mm.
All right. So you need to. Yeah, I will post a link to this in the comments. So I went to Indiana last week to meet Chris Young, who's one of the makers on our group. He also makes things for himself. He has SMA type 2. He's 63 years old, and he's never bought assistive technology. He bought a power chair, but like everything else in his house, he made with the hands of his father, who unfortunately just passed away, which is part of why I went out there. That's what we should consider switch access. He controls everything in his life using his thumb in a sling ring. So one of these, right? So he's got this thing. So he's got 3 switches right here he can hit with his thumb. And he has made his entire life around the small motion that he has, whether that's his lip to drive his power chair or the switches on his hand or his voice, which thankfully he still has. It is inspiring to see what he did. And he did all of it on his own, 100% on his own. And some of his stuff is way more effective than the things in the market.
And I think people poo-poo switch access because, you can do everything with your eyes.
Yeah.
But it's another tool in the toolbox that I think isn't used as effectively as it could be.
Yeah, eye gaze. I know Christine just dropped off. Her daughter uses eye gaze on the PRC accent, and she does it very effectively. But I know people who are. I have tried eye gaze. It is exhausting. It is. I know you're supposed to get used to it over time, and it's not fair for me to say that, but it's exhausting. Just trying it is exhausting. Have you ever successfully used eye gaze, Antoinette?
Yeah, I mean, we work with eye gaze all the time, but I'm just saying, people say, you can just use your eyes, as if switch control, we should just skip over that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he is.
Just get someone's attention in the house. I really don't want to try on my eye gaze system. I just want to push a button and make a noise.
Yeah, no, I really hope you watch the video. I think of all the people here, you would probably get the most out of it, just because he was so open about and humble, but so open about, I'm going to show you everything. Right, there's my bath, and once a week, I get the big bath. And my dad made it out of. His dad was a sheet metal worker, and it's amazing what he's doing in Indiana. And it's like, for him, this is just life, right? This is, when he goes to bed at night, he's on a ventilator. He can't speak, right? He's not positioned in a way where he can use eye gaze, but he can use his 3 switches, and you should see everything he can do with 3 switches. It's amazing. So I have a slightly different view of what switch access means as well. For me, it's more a matter of what have you got, right? how do we convert what you've got into electronic signals? And then how do we convert those electronic signals into whatever it is you want to do?
But I guess my point with that is that just opening up that concept to users and makers and even AT people, I think is beneficial, because I think people skip over switch access a lot. Because I mean, I've said it to AT professionals, switch access, and I have to explain what it means, because they just think of pushing a button and they don't realize that it's more than that.
Yeah, no, and it can't. And I think that the people like Chris, who are not just self-advocates, but self-makers, right? They make their own AT that they then use. Carl Sigmund is another one. Their voice is unique, right? It's something where they're not going to tell you, hey, this is a great new thing I made and you should be impressed by it. They're going to say, this is how I live. I use this thing right here, and watch. This is what I can do. This is what I can't do. This is what I'm frustrated by. And I've tried everything I can, right? Is there a way to add, right?
I mean, on some level, again, I feel like we're going back to 20 years ago assistive technology in some way, because they didn't have commercial stuff back then. And I graduated 20 years ago, so I kind of was right on the cusp of it. So I kind of saw what the old timers did, but then I benefited from having all this commercially available stuff. But like I said, I feel like we're going full circle now.
I think the interesting thing is that if you were doing and this is true of other things in life as well, if you were taking the approach you had 20 years ago and you had today's technology, you can do amazing things, but you can't do it.
That's what's so frustrating to me about not having the time to really get into the whole maker thing. I just don't have the time to do it. Yeah. Because I see the possibilities.
You do. You just have to.
No, I actually don't. I really, really don't. Not today. Maybe 5 years down the road, but I do not today.
Yes, but your experience and what you can say to makers in guiding them can have a better impact. So your voice is very important in this as well.
So we need to find. So Antoinette, where are you?
Austin, Texas.
Austin, Texas. You're right next door to Brady. He's there next.
I'll be there next week.
You see that? So there you go. You two, go have a beer. Actually, Rudy's is fantastic. The county line, Salt Lake's not that good, but Rudy's is amazing, and it's a gas station, so you need to go there. So, Antoinette, are you a Rudy's fan?
I don't want to get into the whole barbecue thing. I don't get that excited about barbecue. It's just a hunk of meat. I don't really get the benefit of eating a hunk of meat, but I'll eat it, but I'm not a connoisseur in barbecue.
All right. Well, how about music? You like 6th Street? You can take them down there?
Sure.
All right. There you go. She's sick of it. She's like, whatever. All right. So
I think that's
anyone, I don't know if you guys read his blog post. It was a really awesome blog post. You should definitely check it out. But if anyone knows of someone who'd be able to have free rent, free cable and internet, and be a night caregiver, for him, that's what he's looking for. You don't need to have a nursing certificate, a CPA or anything. He really just needs a roommate. And so he's really asking the community, friends and family to have their eyes and ears open for someone that would be interested in that, working during the day. He's trying to get 2 of them so one could have a couple nights off. But doing, he says what did he say? Like the regular Joe could do, my care and clearing out his trach and,
will you post, I read that as well. And I think, so I don't want to overstate this. ATMakers will also probably help him with some of that. We are starting a program for people like him who we don't want their voices to be quieted. Like Chris's dad.
Going to a nursing home if he can't figure this out.
Right. And his situation hasn't deteriorated. He's not any worse off. He just lost his caregiver because his dad died. But there's no reason for him to be in a skilled nursing facility. So it is also part of why I went out there into Indiana as well. It is what he needs, is somebody who can help with that. By all means, if you would post a link to Cyborg 5, his blog, that would be great. I agree. I don't know anybody in Indiana. I wish you were there, Mary Elizabeth. You'd be perfect.
I was seriously thinking about it.
Yeah, but anyways, yeah, he was saying he thinks he needs a unicorn, but now he thinks he just needs a horse. So he's good. So yes, by all means, read Chris's blog. Watch the video of us in his house. It is eye-opening. Always, both times I've been there, it's been eye-opening. So I think we are at a point where we need to do like true action items, right, Eric? Yes, you're muted. He stopped moving too. Maybe he's.
Yep. Yeah, we can do that.
All right. All right.
No,
so,
I'm still here.
all right. So, Alyssa and Antoinette.
The action items that I captured.
Go ahead.
So I really only captured 5 topic kind of. They're really topics. How to get into contact with your local RESNA person. Here are places you can go to voice issues and get solutions, which is really kind of like the ATMakers Facebook page, to be honest. There may be other, avenues too, but I know that one works. List of companies that do adaptations for people, more than Mary's brother.
There are others.
Place to post videos and solutions, which is somewhat what the ATMakers website is, but we've also talked about makers making change and, Bill, that's something that you've been looking at as well. And then suggestion is to present kits. And I like the term that was used, so I wrote that down too. Suggestion to make kits ready to make with the option to purchase it or build.
So I think that'd be a good thing to partner with somebody to do that, which also would cover things like returns and failures and things, and give a warranty, that kind of stuff. So I think that's related. The only thing I don't hear in that list that I think is important are the one page, the one page for both the RESNA, the ATP on how to, how to look beyond the available commercial switches, and something for the makers that says how to find somebody to help you with placement and motor function and things like that. I think those one pagers are the tangible things we could come out of this with in a short period of time. Do you agree with that, Antoinette? Do you agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And Alyssa, you're no longer on video, but you agree with that? Yes, she does. I'm going to speak for her. All right. Okay. So let's send an email out to the folks who are here. Eric, we'll have those in Zoom. We'll have their email addresses. So we'll send a follow-up with that and try and get some people to, we'll add on the people who are on Facebook as well. And I'm looking at the things here as well. So I think I'd like to ask Alyssa and Antoinette if they could do, and Alyssa has already got a project from me, so I hate to ask her to do it, but to do a draft or an outline of what would be on that list of things to tell makers before they come up with switch placement or offer something, because I think it can't come from my side of this room, right? And I would ask somebody like Julie Marzano, but she's not here. I think she'd be a great resource to have on that as well. On the other side, I think we need a slick collateral on
Julie was on earlier, by the way.
What's that?
Julie was on earlier.
Oh, was she? Good.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe she's an attendee. Hold on. No. Mary Elizabeth, you're on here twice.
Yeah, I was gonna to start driving home, but then
Gotcha.
I'm not doing it now. So.
Now you're just confusing me. Gotcha. All right. So I want to thank everybody. I want to maybe do a follow-up on this. You guys think this is something we should do a follow-up on? Maybe get some more voices after we hear comments in Facebook, and see where else we need to go. I will be doing, so Alyssa, if you're still here, I'm not sure you are, I'll be doing a an unofficial assessment with Ella on the 2nd. So if you want to come down from Gainesville, I will be here at our facility in Tarpon Springs. And I will not be doing an assessment at all. I will be trying out these options until something works, which is not the goal. Antoinette, you have a call?
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay. I don't think I silenced mine either. So so I'm going to be doing that in April. If I can get Alyssa to come down, maybe we will do one live, right? And go through and take a good look at Ella. I won't do that without somebody, but I don't have anybody here. I'm in Pinellas County, Florida, Clearwater. I'm next to Hillsborough, two of the biggest counties in the country, right? As far as like the number of students in school, I don't know one person in either county who would qualify to do that. I'm sure they exist, but I don't know how to find them. I certainly don't know how to find them in Pinellas. I know the head of AT, and she doesn't know them. So I am kind of discouraged, right?
Well, and I mean, this is the last thing I'm going to say. I think sometimes switch access does get pinged around. Like, is it OT? Is it speech? Is it this? So people will pass the buck sometimes.
Yeah, but in Pinellas County, there should be at least one certified ATP.
You would think.
You would think. All right. So should we be looking at the ATAP programs, the Tech Act programs, or not?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if for nothing else, they would have some equipment you could at least try.
Okay. Well, if we can make equipment to try, I can get equipment to try. Yep. What I need is brains, right? Equipment is less important here than having switches to try. Right?
I mean, I would say another source, and this is a biased recommendation, but I used to work for the ALS Association. So the ALS Association, Florida, I don't think has anyone on staff, but someone who works at an ALS clinic, an OT at an ALS clinic, just because they're going to run into these issues. And if they get into the ALS world, they're going to get exposure to switches on some level.
Would you say that that's stronger than MDA and the SMA communities? The ALS community is stronger?
It's specific.
Well, and I think
with ALS, you're dealing with, degenerative pretty quickly. Right. So it's a different animal.
And you've got somebody who was fully functioning, right? You're not dealing with development that's being delayed. You're dealing with ability that's being lost. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a different animal, but I'm just saying that's another avenue. I'm thinking who deals with people who are the most severely disabled, and ALS, they push the boundaries because they are very physically disabled and typically cognitively intact.
Yeah.
So they really push the boundaries of commercially available technology. Okay.
All right. Well, I appreciate everybody joining. I would like to do this more often. I think we should, and even if this isn't the subject, we should try to gather together some people who are experts in the field, and then get some people who maybe bring more of a doer, maker mentality and less of a studied expert kind of thing, and see if we can't move the ball forward. I think we did a little bit. I think that hopefully we'll get some good follow-up on the Facebook side, and I appreciate it, everybody. And I'm sorry for going long. I don't think anybody's surprised, but 10 o'clock is a little much, right? So maybe next time we'll try to be only a half an hour over the target goal, okay? All right. Everybody wave goodbye. Make sure everybody knows we're leaving. Yeah, all right, bye.
Bye.
All right, bye, everybody.
Thank you.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.